other men in there. And they were troubled because they were having some dreams. And there's nothing worse than having dreams that you don't understand. But Joseph had an amazing gift. He could interpret dreams. And he says, well, actually, I don't interpret them, but God can give the interpretation. So he interpreted these dreams. And so I think it was the baker. Baker got out first? Yeah. Baker got out first. He got back to the palace. And he forgot to tell how cool this Joseph guy was in prison that could interpret dreams. But then the cupbearer got out. And so one day when the king needed a dream interpreted, he says, you know, there was this guy in jail when I was in there. He could interpret dreams. So that was his lucky break. So now he's pulled out. So the Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, I had a dream and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. So he interpreted it. And he was able to warn Pharaoh of some very bad years ahead. Pharaoh said to him, since God has made this known to you, there is no one discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. This was the dream he had. Now he is ruling Egypt. But first he had to be thrown into a well, drugged as a slave, falsely accused and thrown into a dungeon. And I think sometimes as we're on our journey, those things happen to us. And so we lose sight of our dream. So as you're walking, don't be swayed by those things. God does not always take us out of our situation, but he does see us through it. And so here's Joseph now. Joseph was the governor, at this point, Joseph was 30 years old. Now, how old was he when the brothers threw him in the well? 17. That explains why he had a big mouth. No offense, seriously, teenager. He had this dream. He's like, I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. But sometimes we have to learn how to walk in that, let God mature us and grow us in these things. So here's Joseph. And what he had told the Pharaoh was there's going to be a great famine. And he had gotten Pharaoh to wisely start to store up food. So all the other towns now had no food. So now Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So he had fun. For the next several weeks, he had some fun with his brothers that did not know who he was. And I think he kind of had his revenge, because he scared them pretty good. He had planted some objects with them, made it look like they had stolen things. He was just playing with them. But he saw the change in their hearts. And it was interesting, I thought, in this story, because it says that he had then remembered his dream. See, there's some things God speaks in your life that he speaks, and then he lets it go for a while. And I can remember some things in mine where God spoke it, and I'm like, I don't know what that's all about. Years later, I'm like, oh yeah, he did say that. But I had to go through this to get to that. And if those of you who have been through something like that, you look back and go, you know what? I wouldn't have done it any differently. Right? Anybody can feel that. So God will speak something, you're like, oh, that's what that means. I'm going to be promoted tomorrow, and I am taking over this company. That's what that dream means. God told me. Good luck. Because there might be a bankruptcy in your future before you ever get to that. So don't be discouraged by where you are right now. It has no indication of your future. Because what God spoke over you is over you. It's settled. So don't look at the cistern, the pit, the well, the prison, the shackles. Because that is just a temporary step on your journey to the dream. Amen? God allowed it. This is an amazing thing. It says, for 2 years now there's been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will not be plowing and reaping. This is Joseph talking to his brothers now. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you, a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. This was Joseph's insight now after 13 years of abuse. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. Wow. That journey you're on, the tragedy, the pain, the sorrow, the apparent failures, is all part of that thing you're walking towards, if you keep walking. He never despised God for what he made him go through. He's like, I had to get to the palace to save your lives, to become ruler of Egypt. But to get there, I had to go through this. That's amazing. That's liberating. So the snake pit you're in is one step. God sees where you are. He has not lost sight of you. He has not lost sight of you. Looking back. So it's like, well, how do I know when what I'm walking through is just my own mess, or if it's God changing and transforming me? What's your attitude when you're walking in it? Are you angry, bitter, depressed, blame-shifting? Are you saying, my eyes are focused on you. Cry out to God. Get me through this, Lord. Get me through this. Get me by it if you can. If you can't take me around it, take me through it. I was watching Dora the Explorer with Johanna, and every episode wraps up in a nice 12 minutes. There's a place Dora needs to go. But first she has to go through the tree farm, around the big mountain, to Candyland, the Candy Playhouse. And as long as you get to those 3 places, you're good. But there's always an obstacle in the way. There's alligators in the water, or the bridge is missing some planks, and you have to help Dora count the bricks, get it back to place. But she always knows you always know she makes it. She does not get eaten by the alligators. We're still convinced we're going to get eaten by the alligators, but God says, this is where you're going. You're going to Candy Playland. All you have to do is get through the tree farm, around the big mountain, or over the big mountain, or through the big mountain to get to Candy Playhouse. And we're convinced it's not going to work. But if it works for Dora, and it works for Joseph, it can work for us. So when the mountain's standing there, say, that's okay. I already knew it was coming. And on the other side of this mountain is Candy Playhouse. And the commercials are coming, so we're getting there. Swiper, no swiping. For those of you who don't know who that is, that's the fox who tries to mess Dora up. Do you see the metaphor here? And does Swiper ever stop Dora? He doesn't even keep the stuff he swipes. He always gives it back. Because why? It wasn't his. You see the metaphor here? Remember, everything we need in life we learned by kindergarten? So, I think our version was, submit yourself therefore to God, resist the devil, he will flee from you. Swiper, no swiping, because I'm going to Candy Playland. And I have already gone through Tree Farm. And I'm going to get through this mountain. If I have to blow it up with dynamite. Because maybe Diego has dynamite, I don't know. Diego saves the animals. Dora gets there.
Just make Diego a terrorist.
He has to save the bald eagle or whatever. But you see that? You see how silly it would be to think Dora's not going to make it to Candy Playland? Because there's a mountain. How is Dora going to get up the mountain? Well, because Dora has a backpack. The other day, Dora goes, I need a tall ladder. I think I have one in my backpack. I'm thinking, your backpack's this big, Dora. And she needed like a 12-foot ladder to get somebody out of a tree or something. Or
The silly queen.
Thank you.